consciousness of immortality. What do we honestly desire? What is the desire that has not been fulfilled yet? What is the relentless pain and lack which resides within our consciousness that urges us to achieve what we feel belongs to us? What is the inner compulsion that we desire to be manifested? To be financially independent? To be famous and recognizable by millions? To be acknowledged by our accomplishments? To be spiritually content and placid? To be genuinely happy? To be healthy and in great shape? To travel to mysterious destinations in order to discover new inner experience? To have control over hundreds, thousands, or millions of people? To have an amazing relationship, a loving family, and a comfortable place to live? To share and help others coming out from misfortune and predicaments? What is the desire that you simply will not give up? What is the compulsion that makes you obsessed? What is the pain that, although makes you suffer, you continue to fulfill it? What is the urge that makes you truly feel it belongs to you, that you deserve it? The only reason why we experience any form of lack, pain, suffering, chaos, or unfulfilled desires is that we just simply ignore the main purpose of our life. We do not fulfill the purpose of our soul. Rather, all our efforts, discipline, and hard work we address and direct towards the fulfillment of particular compulsion, which we define as our true purpose of life. A tennis player whose desire is to win her or his first Grand Slam tournament. The inner pain is enormous. This pain is defined by the tennis player as the cause, the purpose of life. Without it, life makes no sense. Nothing else matters, only to win that tournament. That compulsion and suffering are actually so strong that the only desire she or he has is to control every single gesture, motion, pass, or return. All life affairs are being perfectly submitted to that cause. There is, however, a paradox within that perfection. The tennis player is unaware, however, that instead of control, she or he gains nothing else but an illusion. There is no control whatsoever. That desire and lack, however, is not the cause, but the final effect. The player is simply fulfilling an already existing result, not the cause. Consequently, even if the player wins the tournament, the pain and urge will not disappear. It will rather increase. The fulfillment itself is nothing else but an illusion. Why illusion? Because the feeling of success and fulfillment is gone, but the pain and hunger to win again is even stronger and greater than before. The tennis player should rather focus on what is the cause of that particular pain and desire. What is the source of that unknown compulsion that pushes her or him to win the game? We all know how powerful our mind is. We believe and practice so-called mind over matter. We believe that mind is more powerful than any life challenge. That with our mind, we can accomplish anything we desire. But if this is so, why is there so much pain in the world? Why are there so many people suffering? Why is there more and more fragmentation between us? Paradoxically, instead of increasing the power of our mind, mankind has been actually doing everything to decrease it, by allowing science to enter every single area and field of our life. Science rules our life, success, and consciousness. Science is everywhere. Whether this is the education system, whether this is a healthcare system, whether this is business, whether we work or talk, whether we eat or drink, whether we practice spirituality or psychology, whether we play tennis or enjoy golf. Science is everywhere. It got to our DNA. Science got to our consciousness. It makes sure we listen to it, pay attention to it, and of course, provides all rational reasons why we cannot live without it. Its role is to persuade us that our certainty depends on it, that our winning relies on it. Yes, science provides the success and certainty. But that success and certainty is short-term fulfillment. After a while, the pain, the sickness, the suffering, and the unfulfillment come back. They haven't been transformed. They have been only temporarily numbed. Science proclaims that the universe is unpredictable, that the energy is one random doubt, that the atoms which surround us and constitutes our consciousness is uncertainty. As a result, it should be no wonder to us why our final outcome and accomplishments are illusionary. They constitute science. Mind over matter does not work, as was primarily designed for mankind. Mind over matter has been corrupted by science. How can we get back on track? Let's ask some questions. What is the language of our soul? What is the way to get in touch with our soul? What is the purpose of our soul? The language of the soul is consciousness. That tennis player's feeling of pain and hunger for winning is consciousness. The language, however, constitutes of countless of consciousness layers. The consciousness of compulsion and suffering is one of these layers unrecognizable by our soul. Actually, each time the consciousness of pain, suffering, or unfulfilled compulsion is being used, our soul has no other avenue but to back out and drift away even further from its purpose. It has to drift away, as the space between certainty and doubt, instead of decreasing, is increasing. The purpose of our soul is to eliminate that space, time, and motion. By combining the frequency of consciousness of our soul with the voluntary transformation of the frequency of our pain, suffering, and compulsion, we will create a new, unknown to us frequency called consciousness of certainty. That new frequency would allow us to make a connection with our soul and find out the true purpose of our life. All that we need to do is to be willing to take under the consideration our soul's opinion and a way how we should deal with our compulsion. The more voluntarily we deal with it, the more profound connection with our soul we make. The more profound connection with the soul we make, the more outstanding the final effect we achieve. In each human consciousness, there are two forces, plus and minus, yin and yang, take or share, do it or don't do it. These two forces are operating within our consciousness and constantly build conflicts and uncertainty. One force tells us to do something, while the other tells us don't do it. Certainty is a prerequisite to make the connection with our soul. However, certainty cannot take place as long as there are these two conflicting forces. The universe, the energy, the atoms is pure certainty. There are no conflicts of any kind within it. The only way to build certainty is to unify these two opposite to each other powers and synthesize them as one unified whole. Once the task is being accomplished, then we create the consciousness of certainty. However, we choose to focus only on one of these powers. We choose to fulfill only one of these forces. It all depends on the compulsion. The other side is always ignored. Practically, how does it work? Imagine the tennis player who voluntarily allows the hunger of winning the Grand Slam to be slightly transformed. By thinking about it, it already hurts and increases the resistance to an even higher level. The tennis player might take that accompanying pain, urge, or compulsion, and as voluntarily as possible, transform the desire to self alone, meaning the science into the desire to share with the soul. Meaning, to recognize that the actual consciousness of pain and urge is being sourced from untransformed soul's memory. To recognize that the transformation can only be done by means of physical action. To recognize that the other player is the means by which she or he can transform that accompanying pain and compulsion. In the case of that tennis player, it may be the return, the forehand, the backhand, the serve. Each single pass constitutes consciousness of pain and suffering, the desire for the self alone. Science has convinced the tennis player that perfection of the pass is the only answer to certainty. The opponent, however, the return, or the opportunity, the means to transform the pain in unstoppable urge. The player decides whether the return will be perfected solely to win the match to satisfy the inner compulsion, or to unify with the opponent. The unification can be done, for instance, by honest, voluntary feeling that it does not matter who is going to win the match. What matters is how the tennis player can help the opponent to transform his or her pain and compulsion. Instead of taking advantage, the tennis player is going to play in the way that weaknesses and vulnerabilities of the opponents are going to be corrected and perfected. By this unification and synchronization of two opposite to each other forces, the tennis player is going to heal the inner pain and compulsion. The task, of course, is not as simple as it sounds. The tennis player, while climbing on the ladder of her or his achievements, uses as much science as possible to accomplish the task. If she or he loses, applies new approaches of science, physics, data. When finally wins, applies even more advanced science and statistics. Either way, whether loses or wins, the tennis player suffers. Once the connection with our soul gets stronger and stronger, we are going to experience the consciousness of certainty. We will be granted the inner feeling of certainty of each singular decision we are going to make. We would be able to see in advance the beginning and end of our decisions. In such a case, we will never be concerned whether to do or not to do something. There would be no collision anymore, only lucid unity between our consciousness and our soul's purpose. By gaining such a profound lucid awareness, we will realize that there is another, even higher level of life. Yes, mankind will soon realize that there is immortality, that our destiny is to be immortal. In the book Consciousness of Immortality, Michael Keter explores the consciousness of certainty as the first step towards immortality.